Thank you, Jeff.
I encountered, or I should say re-encountered, this story which Thomas Merton attributed to an ancient Taoist teacher, Chuang Tzu, in a book titled The Active Life by Parker Palmer. It was a book I had read before, but not for many years. In fact, when I began to read it again, a business card that I had used as a bookmark fell out. I looked at the card and read it, and it was for the Sunnybray Veterinary Clinic in Northern California. This let me know that I had last sat down with that book during the 2011-2012 church year, where I served for a year as minister to the Humboldt Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, just down the road from that vet. I remembered that the book spoke to me then, and as I suspected it would, it did so again. I decided to take this particular book off of my bookshelf after a conversation with a fellow retired UU minister. We got together for a lunch date that had been long postponed because we'd not seen each other. We began our conversation sharing how retirement was for each of us. He spoke of having found a rural rental where it was easy access to take long walks in the meadows and into the woods. He spent lots of times with his cats and was involved in a local cat rescue. And he had had time to deepen his meditation practice and do reading, lots of reading. And I, in my turn, started a long list of the things I do. I began with acknowledging I hadn't really retired. In the prior 2 months, I had preached here, I had preached in Grants Pass, I'd been to the West Hills Fellowship in suburban Portland. I had a time period where I was in a pulpit 3 Sundays in a row. Retired? I don't know. And then in between Sundays, I've been part of the No King's Day planning group in Eugene, Springfield, serving as police liaison in June and October last year and again this March. And for a May Day gathering, I was a de-escalator for another march. In between, I'm active in an interfaith climate group, several UU Church Eugene committees, a local interfaith clergy group, and every Tuesday, after I spend my morning as part of the grounds crew at church, I go down to the federal building where the ICE offices are and join in an interfaith gathering called Singing for Our Lives. My wife Suzanne and I have also been busy in recent weeks trying to help a church friend get Medicaid qualified in order to move into an assisted living. Meeting with them before and after, getting other people to do the actual moving, but offering lots of assistance. And recently, I've decided to get active in my local neighborhood association. When I'm at home, I spend time almost every day weeding and mulching and planting in my yard and my veggie garden. Occasionally, if I get all my other tasks done, I take time to walk in the woods near my home. I do most Wednesday mornings log into an online meditation group with Eugene church friends to just sit for a bit in quiet contemplation. I have been able at least to add that to my weekly calendar. Even now, as I share my to-do list, I sometimes find even that a bit exhausting. My friend, hearing the list, smiled and said, "Are you happy?" I smiled back and answered, "Yes. I am a doist." I do lots of stuff, and for the most part of that is a way of being that usually works for me. Sometimes, though, I find this seeming addiction to action a pattern of behavior I would like to change a bit. I want to be sure that I'm not too busy to just look around me, perhaps to be just a wee bit more like that wood carver in our story, to assure that what I do is done well. My doism is not always my healthiest or wisest way of being. I am often caught up in our grind culture that measures us by our productivity, or even worse, convinces me to judge myself by that same standard. I wish to be more of a human being and less of a human doing. I find that some of the things I do, like gardening and most especially the work I call sermon crafting, does draw me inward. When I'm in the garden, I'm in tune with all that is living and growing around me. This one's a weed, but that one's a wildflower. Paying close attention. And the sitting down to write a sermon is the culmination of many hours of reading and pondering and deep inner exploration. My collegial minister friend, who is a self-described introvert, and I left our lunch with an agreement. He would try to get out more often, and I would try to look within more often. The very next day, I went to my bookshelf and I took Parker Palmer's book off the shelf and opened it again. Palmer, like me, does not find it easy to be quietly contemplative. Though he embraces Quaker practices of silent worship, he is, by his own description, more comfortable when he is in action. I often find it challenging to sit quietly. During the years when I had a regular meditation practice, it was one based on the teaching of the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, which includes, after sitting quietly, walking meditation. I needed that part because I am drawn towards action. Palmer describes for us 3 different kinds of action we all engage in: work, creation, and caring. Work is what we need to do to earn a living, to put food on the table, necessary chores and the like. Creation invites us to consider how we do things and consider doing them differently, or perhaps discover whole new things to do. Caring asks us to put others' wants and needs ahead of our own. Now, some activities can be all of the above. I remember my years as a preschool teacher certainly was my work, and busy and exhausting, and also deeply caring, and called me to bring in my deepest inner loving self. Ministry is a bit like that, though some parts of serving a congregation I found to be just plain work. Palmer writes that our aliveness is fully expressed through our actions and through our contemplation, or as I like to describe it, through our doing and through our pondering. Palmer suggests that we might see these 2 seemingly contrary ways of being as linked as one. He uses a hyphenated word, one word: contemplation hyphen and hyphen action. Kind of a long word, but I think we get the sense of his attempt to tie them together as one thing. Buddhist teachers might use the description of mindful action, or the word mindfulness that we bring to what we do and how we do it. It's bringing a thoughtful focus on both a task and to actually do it with contemplative depth. An example I would offer is doing the dishes, which is a task but can be much more when we pay attention to the feel of warm, soapy water on our hands, or take a moment to watch the glistening light on a soap bubble. Experiencing a thing rather than merely getting it done. Palmer tells us that contemplation can be a form of action when we attend to inner movement. In such times, an outward expression can be a new discovery and creative recreation. He lifts up Thomas Merton, who gifted us with today's reading. Merton was a Trappist monk who spent decades sitting and praying in a monastery in rural Kentucky. Yet he wrote of racism in America with a contemplative eye that saw racism more deeply than the eye of many activists. As Palmer notes, despite the fact that Merton never marched in a demonstration or participated in formal politics, his contemplation had an impact on the history of the century. The story of the woodcarver certainly offers us an example of how the action one takes can arise more fully when that action is grounded in deep contemplation. The act of doing has the potential to become what Palmer calls real action. We do not need to fast like the woodcarver king or plunge into contemplation as did Thomas Merton, for contemplation and action are part of everyday life. Raising a child, nurturing a pet, or undertaking the sometimes daunting task of nurturing a human relationship. All these merge contemplation and action as one. Palmer notes that contemplation can include things like staring out of the window, reading a book, thinking long and hard, grieving a painful loss. Whatever our action is that express and help shape our souls and our world. Whatever our contemplation is can help us see the reality behind the veil of surface thinking and doing. Contemplation and action are not the high skills of the virtuoso few, Palmer reminds us. They are the warp and weft of human life, the interwoven threads that form the fabric of who we are and who we are becoming. Real action, he writes, is part mind itself, as well as part spirit and soul. He quotes the poet Thomas Rothke, who wrote that, "I learn by going where I have to go. Learning by going. Learning by doing." Or as a popular adage describes it, how can I know what I think until I hear myself say it? For some, it's saying out loud. For others, it's listening to that small voice within. Articulation can be contemplation expressed as action, as speaking, as sharing with others what we have observed or experienced and pondered. Palmer describes something like this happening for him in writing, where words and context and sometimes something deeper emerges through the process of writing. I have no doubt that some of you who have done some journaling work have experienced something like that. I know it's often true when I sit down to write after hours of study and contemplation to write a sermon. The contemplative process that precedes the action of writing enhances the product and my own experience of the process. You'll recall that in our woodcarver story, the exceptional beauty of the completed bell stand was so amazing that some attributed it to the work of external spirits, while the reality it was the mind, spirit, and soul of the carver that made it so. Now, of course, he brought great skill in working with wood, skill refined by study and years of practice in that process, and then brought more than that skill to their final creation. I am only a workman, the carver tells us. I have no secrets. There is only this. He fasted in order to set his heart at rest and to set aside gain and excess, praise, or criticism. Then and only then did he go into the forest ready to discover the perfect tree. A tree which appeared before his eyes with the bell stand already within. Clearly, without doubt, he tells us. As he describes it, his own collected thoughts encountered the hidden potential within that object, within the wood. The same kind of encounter can happen when we are fully open to discover the hidden potential in any given situation, and perhaps most significantly, the hidden potential within another person. And sometimes that's something hidden within one's own mind, spirit, and soul. This can only happen when our thoughts are cleared of self-doubt and judgment. Doing so can require not just literal fasting, but deep contemplative skill. Such skill can require more practice than done learning the craft of carving. It can be found in deep listening, or soulful writing, or heartfelt caregiving. Deep knowing, deep mastery begins with learning how to look within and find our own right action, our cause, our vocation. Now, by vocation, I mean something much broader and deeper than a career, talking about what might be described as a calling. It is seeking the elusive answer to the question, what is it mine to do? When I served the congregation on Whidbey Island, Washington for a number of years, I had the privilege to get to know several amazing, talented artists who had previously had careers as lawyers, managers, a physician, and a professor, who found that their true calling, when they no longer needed to assure that what they created was marketable, that is when they were able to do their most masterful work. Now, some are blessed to be called early to the work that suits them best, though they may find they have to set it aside for a time to return to it later. My dear friend Tim is a master woodworker. He's crafted amazing sculptures and furniture sculptures. Yet for a time, as he described it, he put on a tool belt and worked as a finished carpenter because he had a family to support. Yet the calling to mastery remained, and now in his 70s, he is for the first time in his life beginning to build a house that will not be merely a product to sell, but will be his own home. We are all builders. We are all creators. We all have a self. We are in the continual process of creating and recreating, of becoming. In the final analysis, what we are crafting, Palmer tells us, is not bell stands or justice or peace. We are crafting ourselves. The person we are throughout our lives becoming is our greatest gift to the increase of peace and justice and beauty in the world. Palmer advises, in the active life of work, creativity, and caring, we're giving endless opportunities to lose ourselves so that we may find ourselves. To join with others in the great community so that freed from the fear of isolation, we become who we are. May each of us find and be who we wish to truly become. May we make it so.